My greedy siblings fought over Grandma's will for months, claiming I manipulated her, until the lawyer read the part of what she left them. For 18 months, I was the only one who showed up. Every Tuesday and Friday, I'd drive the 43 minutes to Grandma's house with groceries, medications, and whatever else she needed. I'd clean her bathroom, organize her pills, and listen to the same stories about her childhood farm for the 100th time. My brother Caleb lived 12 minutes away. My sister Natasha lived 8. Neither visited unless they needed something. When Grandma fell and broke her hip at 86, I took family leave to care for her. I slept on her lumpy couch for 3 weeks, helping her to the bathroom at 2 a.m. and making sure she didn't skip physical therapy. Caleb called twice. Natasha sent a get-well card. "Where is everyone?" Grandma asked during her recovery. "They're busy," I lied, fluffing her pillows. She squeezed my hand. "You're a good girl, Quinn. Don't think I don't notice." When the cancer diagnosis came last spring, suddenly my siblings became very attentive, not to Grandma, to me. They wanted updates, medical reports, treatment plans. They'd call during my lunch breaks, demanding to know why I hadn't consulted them about her oncologist choice. "We're family," Natasha would say. "We should make decisions together." But when Grandma needed someone to drive her to chemotherapy at 6 a.m., they were nowhere to be found. During her final month, Caleb visited twice, both times asking if she'd mentioned updating her will. Natasha brought flowers once, and spent the entire visit photographing herself holding Grandma's hand for her social media. "Look how devoted I am to my grandmother," her Instagram caption read. I wanted to vomit. Grandma passed on a quiet Thursday morning while I held her hand. She'd been unconscious for 2 days, but I kept talking to her anyway, reading her favorite poetry aloud. When her breathing stopped, I kissed her forehead and called the hospice nurse. Then I called my siblings. They arrived within an hour, faster than they'd moved in months. The fighting started immediately. "She should have gone to that specialist in Dallas," Caleb said, pacing her living room. "Quinn probably talked her out of aggressive treatment," Natasha added, eyeing Grandma's antique furniture like she was mentally cataloging it. I bit my tongue and started planning the funeral they should have been organizing together. The accusations began 3 days later. "You isolated her," Caleb accused during the wake, "turned her against us. You were controlling her finances," Natasha whispered loudly enough for half the funeral home to hear. Classic elder abuse. I stared at them in disbelief. "I was taking care of her while you two pretended she didn't exist." "That's manipulation," Caleb shot back. "Making yourself the only option, so she'd leave you everything." The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday. For 6 days, they called me repeatedly, demanding I admit to poisoning Grandma's mind against them. They threatened to contest whatever she'd left me. They even suggested getting the police involved. "She was probably senile," Natasha said during one particularly nasty voicemail. "No competent person would cut out their own grandchildren. I'd listened to enough." Tuesday arrived gray and drizzling. We gathered in Attorney Jameson's oak-paneled office. The tension so thick I could barely breathe. Caleb wore his most expensive suit. Natasha had hired her own lawyer just in case. Attorney Jameson cleared his throat and opened the document. The last will and testament of Dorothy Mae Whitmore, written in her own hand and witnessed by 2 independent parties on March 15th of this year. March 15th, 2 weeks before she died. 2 weeks after Caleb's last visit, asking about her will. "To my granddaughter Quinn, who has shown me more love and devotion than I ever deserved, I leave my house and all its contents, my savings accounts, investment portfolio, and the family farm in Nebraska." Caleb's face went purple. Natasha started to interrupt, but the lawyer held up his hand. "There's more. To my remaining grandchildren, Caleb and Natasha, who have shown me exactly who they are over these past years, I leave the following." The room went dead silent. "To Caleb, I leave you my medical bills, all $47,000 worth, the ones you never asked about while demanding updates on my assets. You'll find them neatly organized in the manila folder marked Caleb's Inheritance in my kitchen drawer." Caleb's lawyer leaned over and whispered something urgent in his ear. His face went from purple to ash gray. "To Natasha, I leave you my collection of every voicemail, text message, and social media post where you mention my money, my house, or my belongings. I had Quinn's friend in IT help me compile them. There are 47 audio files and 83 screenshots. You spoke about my death like you were planning a shopping spree." Natasha's mouth fell open, but Attorney Jameson wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I want it known that I was of completely sound mind when I wrote this will. I was examined by Dr. Patricia Vance on March 10th and declared mentally competent. The examination was recorded, and Dr. Vance will testify to my mental state if anyone contests this document." He looked directly at my siblings. Mrs. Whitmore also left detailed journals documenting every interaction with her grandchildren over the past 2 years. Every missed visit, every phone call asking about money, every excuse for not helping with her care. She documented every time Quinn showed up and every time the rest of you didn't. My heart was pounding. I'd known Grandma was sharp, but I hadn't realized she'd been documenting everything. "There's one final section," the lawyer continued. "A personal message from Mrs. Whitmore." He pulled out a sealed envelope marked with my name. "This is to be read aloud in the presence of all parties." My hands shook as I opened it. Grandma's familiar handwriting filled the page. "My darling Quinn," I read aloud, my voice breaking. "If you're reading this, then my other grandchildren are probably furious about what I've left them. Good. They deserve to be angry at themselves." I looked up. Caleb was staring at the floor. Natasha was crying, but not from grief. "For 2 years, I watched them circle like vultures while you sacrificed your time, your energy, and your own needs to care for me. When I was diagnosed with cancer, Caleb asked if I'd updated my will before asking how I was feeling. When I broke my hip, Natasha's first text was about whether I'd need to sell the house. The words hit the room like bombs. But you, my sweet girl, never asked for anything. You just showed up. Day after day, week after week, you held my hand through chemo. You slept on my terrible couch when I was scared. You made sure I took my medications and drove me to every appointment. You read to me when I couldn't sleep, and never once complained about my stories you'd heard 100 times. Tears were streaming down my face. I am leaving you everything, not because you manipulated me, but because you loved me. Real love doesn't have an agenda. Caleb and Natasha loved my money. You loved me. I set the letter down, unable to continue. Attorney Jameson cleared his throat. There is one more provision. Mrs. Whitmore established a $50,000 trust fund that will pay for ongoing care of her gravesite and an annual scholarship in her name for nursing students. She specifically noted that Caleb and Natasha are not eligible to be trustees or beneficiaries of this fund. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Caleb found his voice. This is ridiculous. She was obviously coerced. Actually, Attorney Jameson said, pulling out another folder. Mrs. Whitmore anticipated that accusation. She had herself evaluated by 3 different doctors, including a psychiatrist specializing in elder care. All 3 confirmed her mental competency. She also had 2 sessions with a social worker to ensure she wasn't under duress. He spread the documents across his desk. She planned this very carefully. Mrs. Whitmore also recorded video testimonials explaining her reasoning, which she deposited in 3 separate bank safety deposit boxes. The recordings are dated and witnessed. Natasha's lawyer whispered something to her. She shook her head violently. "I want to contest this," she said. "There has to be a way." "You're welcome to try," Attorney Jameson replied. But Mrs. Whitmore's documentation is extensive. She saved every receipt for Quinn's gas money, every medical appointment Quinn attended, every grocery bill Quinn paid. She even recorded phone conversations where you both asked about her finances. "You can't record phone calls without consent," Caleb protested. "Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording." Mrs. Whitmore consented to recording her own phone calls. I stared at the lawyer in amazement. Grandma had thought of everything. She also established that if anyone contests this, frivolously, they forfeit even what little she did leave them, and those assets transfer to Quinn as well. The room fell silent again. Natasha was the first to break. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "This is insane. Completely insane. That manipulative old—" "I'd be very careful what you say next," Attorney Jameson interrupted. "Mrs. Whitmore's final recordings include specific instructions about what should happen if either of you speak disrespectfully about her after her death." Natasha's mouth snapped shut. I looked at my siblings, really looked at them, and felt a mixture of pity and disgust. They were strangers, people I'd grown up with but never really known. "I think we're done here," I said quietly. I gathered the documents and started to leave, but Caleb grabbed my arm. "You can't just take everything," he hissed. "We're family." I pulled free. "No, family shows up. Family cares about each other. Family doesn't circle like buzzards waiting for someone to die." "She was our grandmother too," Natasha protested. "Really? When's the last time you knew what medications she was taking? When's the last time you asked about her pain levels instead of her bank balance?" Neither answered. I thought so. I walked toward the door, then turned back. "By the way, there's something else you should know. Grandma wasn't rich when she got sick. The cancer treatments, the home health aides, the medical equipment, it all cost money. Most of what she left me is what's left after I spent my own savings keeping her comfortable." Their faces went blank. "You were fighting over money that was mostly mine to begin with." I left them sitting in that office and drove straight to Grandma's house. My house now. It felt wrong calling it that, but I couldn't think of it any other way. The house smelled like her lavender perfume and the lemon oil she used on her furniture. I sat in her favorite chair and opened the letter she'd left me, reading the parts I'd been too emotional to finish. "Quinn, I hope you don't feel guilty about inheriting everything. You earned it through love, not manipulation. The others will be angry, but that's their burden to carry, not yours. I've also left some things they don't know about. In my bedroom closet behind the Christmas decorations, you'll find a box marked for Quinn's future. Inside are some family heirlooms that belong to my grandmother, your great-great-grandmother. There's also a letter explaining the family history that they'll never appreciate, but you will. And in the garage, under the workbench, there's a coffee can with $8,000 in cash. I've been saving it for years from my grocery money. It's for your first vacation after all this is over. Somewhere warm where you can heal." I sat in that quiet house and cried for the first time since she died. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude. Even in death, she was still taking care of me. The next weeks were brutal. Caleb hired a lawyer to contest the will despite the warnings. They fought for 3 months, spending thousands on legal fees only to have the case dismissed. The judge reviewed Grandma's documentation and video testimonials, then told Caleb's lawyer that it was the most thorough and well-documented will he'd ever seen. Natasha tried a different approach. She launched a social media campaign claiming I'd stolen her inheritance. She posted sob stories about being cut out of her beloved grandmother's will by a manipulative sister. The sympathy lasted exactly 2 days, until someone found her old Instagram posts, talking about what she'd do with Grandma's money when the old bat finally kicked the bucket. The post went viral, but not in the way she'd hoped. Her employer, a family law firm, fired her. Apparently, potential clients weren't comfortable with a lawyer who publicly called elderly relatives old bats, while speculating about their deaths. 6 months later, I was sitting in Grandma's garden, reading a book and drinking tea from her favorite china cup, when Caleb showed up unannounced. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, the defeated posture of someone who'd lost everything. "Quinn," he said, standing at the gate, "can we talk?" I marked my page and looked at him. "What do you want?" "I need help." The words seemed to physically pain him. "The medical bills? They're real. And there are more than just hers. Dad's been hiding his own debts. The business is failing. My house is in foreclosure." I set down my teacup. "And you want what from me?" "A loan, just until I get back on my feet." The audacity was breathtaking. Alone. You can afford it. She left you everything. She left me everything because I earned it. Because I was there when you weren't. I know I messed up, he said, his voice breaking. But she was our grandmother. She would have wanted family to help family. I stood up and walked to the gate. You're right. She would have wanted family to help family. That's why she left you exactly what you gave her. Nothing. I started to walk away, then turned back. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a donation to the hospice care facility in Grandma's name. I'm going to fund 3 nursing scholarships at the community college. And I'm going to volunteer at the senior center where lonely old people sit by themselves because their families are too busy to visit. Caleb's face crumpled. Please, Quinn, I'm desperate. You should have thought about that when you spent 2 years asking about her money instead of asking how she was feeling. I walked back to my chair and picked up my book. The gate's over there. He stood there for another minute, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. When I didn't look up, he finally left. Natasha never came by. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved back in with our parents after losing her job. She was working at a retail store and living paycheck to paycheck. Part of me felt bad for them, but a bigger part of me remembered all those nights I'd spent on Grandma's couch, listening to her labored breathing and wondering if she was going to make it through the night. All those mornings I'd arrived early to help her shower because she was too proud to ask the home health aide. All those doctor appointments where I'd taken notes and asked questions while they were nowhere to be found. A year later, I was cleaning out Grandma's attic when I found one more box she'd left for me. Inside was a handwritten journal dated just a month before she died. March 1st. Quinn stayed all night again because I was having trouble breathing. She slept in the chair next to my bed and held my hand when the pain got bad. I don't know what I did to deserve such love. March 5th. Caleb called to ask if I'd thought about selling the farm. Didn't ask how I was feeling after yesterday's chemo. Didn't ask if I needed anything. Just wanted to know about money. March 12th. Natasha posted another picture of herself online with some ridiculous caption about living her best life. Her grandmother is dying and she's taking selfies at expensive restaurants. March 18th. Quinn brought me soup and stayed to make sure I ate it. She has to work a double shift tomorrow but still drove over because I mentioned feeling weak. She thinks I don't notice how tired she is. But I see everything. March 25th. Final entry. I'm meeting with the lawyer tomorrow to update the will one last time. Quinn will be shocked by what I'm leaving her, but she shouldn't be. Love like hers deserves to be rewarded. As for the others, they'll get exactly what they've given me. I closed the journal and sat in the dusty attic, surrounded by the remnants of a life well lived. Photo albums, quilts she'd made by hand, letters from friends she'd outlived. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a legacy of love. 2 years have passed now. I've renovated the farmhouse and turned part of it into a respite care facility for family caregivers. People can bring their elderly relatives for a day or weekend while they rest and recharge. It's fully funded by Grandma's investments, which I've managed carefully. Caleb lost his house but found work at a nonprofit. He sends me a Christmas card every year with a brief note apologizing and thanking me for not being vindictive. I send one back wishing him well. Natasha moved across the country and started over. She's apparently doing better, though we don't talk. Sometimes I wonder if Grandma knew what would happen to them, if she deliberately left them with just enough consequences to learn from their mistakes, but not enough to destroy them completely. But mostly, I just feel grateful. Grateful for the time we had together, grateful for the lessons she taught me about real love versus conditional love, grateful that she saw my devotion and made sure it didn't go unnoticed. Last week, I was watering her rose garden when a young woman knocked on my door. She introduced herself as Bethany, Caleb's daughter, my niece. She was 18 and starting college, hoping to become a nurse. I heard about the nursing scholarships, she said nervously, and I wanted to tell you about my dad. I invited her in for tea. He talks about you and great-grandma a lot, she said, about how wrong he was, how he took her for granted. He tells me to be like you when I grow up, to put people before money. My throat tightened. He's changed, Aunt Quinn. He volunteers at a nursing home now, every weekend. He reads to the patients and just sits with the ones who don't have visitors. She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of Caleb sitting beside an elderly man holding his hand. He says it's what great-grandma would have wanted, and what you taught him by example. When Bethany left, I walked out to Grandma's grave. The headstone is simple but elegant, surrounded by the flowers she loved most. Your plan worked, I told her. Even from beyond the grave, you're still teaching people how to love better. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above me, and for just a moment I could have sworn I smelled her lavender perfume. Some inheritances are measured in dollars. Others are measured in the kind of person you become. Grandma left me both.